In the remote highlands of San Pedro Mountains, deep within Carbon County, Wyoming, a discovery made in the 1930s challenged generations of scientists, historians, and folklorists to rethink what they thought they knew about the area. What started as a straightforward gold prospecting trip soon became one of North America's most intriguing archaeological puzzles. The discovery of a tiny mummified figure that defied easy explanation. The remains, later nicknamed Pedro, had such unusual and puzzling features that many initially believed they found evidence of a lost race or even a species unknown to science. Pedro captured public fascination not just because of its strange appearance, but also due to the mystery that surrounded it long after its physical form disappeared from records. The find happened between 1932 and 1934, when gold prospectors Cecile and Frank Carr were exploring the rugged landscape, hoping to strike it rich. Near the Pathfinder Reservoir, in an area called the Little Man Mining Claim, they blasted open a cave sealed by time and debris. Inside, they found a seated figure on a ledge, appearing as if carefully placed there by unknown hands long ago. This discovery was more mysterious and captivating than any amount of gold. Early measurements and descriptions suggested something unnatural. The mummy was seated and measured less than 7 inches tall. When estimated at full height, it would have been about 16 to 17 inches tall. It weighed only about 1 pound. The figure had an adult-like face with a full set of teeth, some sharp and carnivore-like. Its nose was flattened, the head oddly shaped, and its skin darkened and shrunken by the dry mountain air that had preserved it so well. Overall, it did not look like a child, but rather an ancient miniature being, possibly even otherworldly. From the beginning, various theories circulated. Some thought it was an elaborate hoax, maybe crafted from a monkey or altered remains. Others believed it was a medical oddity. But one idea caught the public's imagination above all: that Pedro was not a child but part of an extinct race of miniature people rumored to have once lived in the Americas. By 1936, Pedro reportedly came into the possession of Homer F. Sherrill, who claimed the mummy had been taken to the Field Museum in Chicago. However, no museum records confirmed this. Sherrill and others exhibited Pedro as a lost pygmy species, a potential new hominid, or an evolutionary cousin of modern humans. In the 1940s, Pedro was displayed in a drugstore in Mitz, Wyoming, before being bought by Ivan Goodman, a car dealer from Casper. Goodman placed the mummy in a domed glass jar on a wooden pedestal and proudly declared the preserved body of a 65-year-old man from a mysterious race that once roamed the American West. In 1950, Goodman either lost Pedro during a trip to New York or sold it to Leonard Wadler, a businessman and anthropologist who later moved to Florida. Wadler's death in the 1980s effectively ended the known trail of Pedro's physical remains. Since then, attempts to locate or recover the mummy have failed. The original X-rays, reports, and related artifacts have also vanished, leaving only newspaper clippings, stories, and speculation. One reason Pedro fascinated many, especially in the American West, was that it seemed to confirm indigenous legends passed down through generations. Among local tribes are ancient tales of the Naragar, a mythical race of tiny people said to live in the mountains and plains of today's Wyoming and Montana. Described as fierce warriors who used poison-tipped arrows and practiced ritual euthanasia, crushing the heads of their sick or elderly to preserve their group. The story of Pedro echoed these myths eerily. Observers noted Pedro's skull seemed damaged, possibly by blunt force trauma. The figure's adult-like face and unusual burial posed deep in the mystery. Was Pedro one of the Naragar come to life, or simply a tragic anomaly with a rare genetic disorder? Scientific study finally came in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Anthropologist Harry Shapiro from the American Museum of Natural History and Paul S. Martin from the Field Museum examined available X-rays and photos. They concluded that Pedro was actually a human infant born with anencephaly, a rare birth defect where the brain and skull don't fully develop. Anencephaly occurs in about 3 out of every 10,000 births in the U.S., resulting in infants missing major parts of their brain and skull. The condition is fatal, often within hours or days after birth. It can cause the skull to appear flattened or misshapen, creating the illusion of an adult-like face on a newborn. The mummy's shriveled, leathery appearance was due to natural mummification in the dry, high-altitude cave environment. The adult-like features that puzzled early observers, wrinkled skin, seemingly developed teeth, though infant teeth could be present, and body proportions relative to malformed skull, could all be explained by this condition. Their scientific view held that Pedro was likely a baby who died at or shortly after birth, and whose body was naturally preserved by the cave's dry conditions. George W. Gill, a forensic anthropologist from the University of Wyoming, later reviewed the X-rays and agreed with this diagnosis. Pedro was not a tiny warrior or pygmy, but an unfortunate infant with a fatal birth defect. Then in 1994, the story took an unexpected twist. After an episode of the TV series Unsolved Mysteries featured Pedro's story, a family in Cheyenne, Wyoming came forward with another tiny mummy they had privately owned for decades. This mummy, nicknamed Chiquita, was reportedly bought from a sheep herder in the late 1920s and closely resembled Pedro in appearance. Chiquita stood just 4 inches tall and was also naturally mummified. Unlike Pedro, Chiquita could be studied with modern scientific techniques. Researchers conducted X-rays, DNA tests, and carbon dating. The results showed Chiquita was a Native American female infant also born with anencephaly. Carbon dating placed her death between 1500 and 1700 AD. Her burial pose matched Pedro's, arms wrapped around knees while seated upright, which was highly unusual compared to typical Native American burials in that region. Even more curious was her light or blonde hair, rare among indigenous populations. Despite scientific interest, Chiquita's family later withdrew her from further study. Like Pedro, she too disappeared from public view, leaving researchers with limited data and more questions than answers. Even with scientific consensus on their medical conditions, some remain skeptical. The absence of Pedro's physical remains combined with mysteries about both mummies' unusual postures and origins leaves room for speculation. Fringe theorists and cryptozoologists often cite Pedro and Chiquita as proof of unknown hominids, lost tribes, aliens, or even the legendary Naragar. Some scientists acknowledge how strange their burial styles and preservation are. Why were they mummified in such peculiar poses in remote locations? Why are there no other examples like them among regional indigenous burials? Could these be cultural or ritual practices now lost to history? Above all, what happened to the original Pedro? Researchers have even offered rewards, like $10,000 from New York creationist John Adolphi in 2005, for information leading to Pedro's whereabouts or confirmation of his fate. Despite these efforts, the mummy remains missing, perhaps tucked away forgotten in a private collection or tragically destroyed over time. To this day, no similar mummies have been found anywhere in Wyoming or North America. They remain unique enigmas. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of North America's strangest archaeological mysteries. If you enjoyed this exploration, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into history's hidden corners. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think Pedro was simply a tragic medical case? Or might there be more truth behind the ancient Naragar legends? Could these tiny mummies represent something we don't yet fully understand? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and stay curious.